with Bishop Dale C. Bronner.
His message ought to be seen in our life, the essence of his message that God is good, God is faithful, even during tempting, trying times in your life. God is faithful. A person could be dying with cancer and God is still good and faithful. You don't know what that does to me when I've been to the bedside of so many dying saints and they are blessing God. Cancer has no power to rob that spirit of joy on the inside of them. And so, at the same time, if you have a ministry that does not innovate, it will become irrelevant. And people who don't innovate and reposition themselves will find themselves out of a position. Companies that don't innovate don't survive. In fact, the more successful a company is, the more it has to innovate in order to stay on top. I mean, look at Apple. I mean, leaders that don't innovate are displaced by those who do. So you have to keep changing yourself, keep challenging yourself so that you think better, so that you pray better, so that you will be better. And you have to constantly confront your limitations. Constantly confront your limitation and refuse to be average. Refuse to be average. Nobody's going out of their way to hire average people. If you had a business, you want exceptional people to work for you. So don't be average yourself. Did you know in 1990, one of the largest workforces in America were bank employees? But by the dawn of the computer, internet age, and with the advent of the ATM machines, fewer and fewer bank employees were required. And as a result, millions were laid off. But then more available work came that really honestly became more interesting to them with higher paying jobs in other industries. I mean, they didn't die. All of the tellers that used to work in the bank, they didn't die. They're just working someplace else. You get laid off of one industry, I mean, you gotta eat. Touch your neighbor, say you gotta eat. I mean, you gotta do something. You gotta eat. And you know, our colleges and university students must be careful that they are not being trained today for industries and careers that are headed toward obsolescence. You have to really be forward thinking. You have to look on the changing seascape where we are. I mean, one characteristic of the most successful and happy people is that they are intensely future oriented. It's really a trait of successful people, is that they are intensely future oriented. They refuse to dwell on what has happened and things that cannot be changed. Instead, they focus on the factors that are under their control, and they focus on the action that they can take to create the kind of future that they desire. They believe that their best days and their most satisfying experiences actually lie in the future, waiting to be created or enjoyed. They look to the future like a child looks to Christmas. I love something that Rosabeth Moss Cantor said. She said, to stay ahead, you must have your next idea waiting in the wings. If you're really going to stay ahead, you're going to have your next idea waiting in the wings. And you know, ladies are designed to create. Men are masterful creators, but women are incredible creators. Did you know that Kevlar was discovered by a woman? It's the strong fibers in body armor that protects from bulletproof stuff. A woman discovered that. Guess what else a woman discovered? A lady by the name of Mary Anderson discovered windshield wipers. You know why? Because she was up in New York and she was on a tram, and the tram had to stop every few minutes, and the driver had to get out and push the snow off of the windshield. Homegirl says, something ought to be done about this. And she developed windshield wipers. Josephine Cochran, my God, ladies, you all ought to write her a thank you letter. You know what she discovered? The dishwasher. Now, she was a woman of means. Now, she didn't discover, let me explain it to you. She didn't discover the dishwasher because she got tired of washing dishes, because homegirl was so well off, she had servants washing her dishes. But let me tell you what motivated her to develop the dishwasher. You know what she did? What motivated her is that she was frustrated. She was frustrated. She got terribly frustrated. You know what happened in her life? Her servants were breaking her heirloom china. She got sick of it. It frustrated her out of her wits to hear another one of her heirloom pieces of china being broken by a servant. Homegirl went in and created a dishwasher. Did you know that your problem is the seedbed for your answer? Failure is the womb of success. It's a thing that brings some stuff out of you. Don't get mad, get smart. Let your frustration drive you to productivity. You ought to produce something out of that. That's what happened with Betty Nesmith Graham. She was a typist, but she wasn't that good of a typist, and she kept having to start over. And she's a woman that developed liquid paper. And what gave her the idea is that she was somewhere and she was noticing these painters, and when they would mess up in their painting, they would just paint over it. And then she'd start realizing, because we hadn't developed the computers yet to where you could just do the backspace button and delete it and then print out a fresh copy. This was a type of old typewriter, you know, where you had to, when you got to the end of the line, you had to push it back over. And these were manual type things, you know. You had to have some strength, you know, the little weak fingers. And homegirl came up with liquid paper. This was an answer to a problem that frustrated her. She got tired of having a letter, and then she wanted her letter to look professional. And so they had to pull the paper out and start all over again. And so she says, bump that. You know, liquid paper, here it comes. It came out of a frustrating problem. And I was so glad there's another lady, Ruth Wakefield. God bless her soul. She developed chocolate chip cookies. Somebody had told her to make some, and you know, they told her the recipe called for some chocolate that would melt, and she didn't have any. She took a Nestle bar and broke it into pieces, and she noticed that it went into that little shape of those little chips, and voila. It's so interesting. A lady by the name of Tabitha Babbitt, she discovered the circular saw. She developed the circular saw. You never would have thought that, would you? You'd be surprised. You get enough problems in your life. Necessity is the mother of invention. Necessity, it is a mother of invention. If you've got something that has been vexing you, the very problem that frustrates you out of your wits is oftentimes the very problem that God has ordained for you to solve. You'll be surprised. You will honestly be surprised. Did you know that the word provision comes from a Latin word provisio, which literally means foreseeing? The word provision. And provision honestly means seeing a need before you have it and then meeting it or preparing for it. And so hence one of the main definitions of provision is the arrangement or preparation beforehand as of the doing of something, the meeting of needs, the supplying of means, etc. It has to do with seeing something before it happens. Isn't that what it's talking about with the ant? Preparing for the fall, for the winter, while they've got the harvest already. It's saying, listen, winter is coming. You're in a harvest season right now. Store up some stuff during the times of abundance. That's foreseeing. It was about provision. Provision. It's not for now, it's for later. It is seeing it ahead of time. God sees the need before we have the need and then actually supplies it. You have to see it. That's what you call provision. 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 Wouldn't it be stupid to buy an automobile and then drive it off the lot, and then you buy it in the summertime, and then in the wintertime there's no heat in it and you're freezing to death? And then you take it back to the dealership and say, why didn't y'all think to put some heat in there? I'm freezing. I got to drive to work in a blanket. You know what happens when your thermostat goes out. And so they didn't have that as an afterthought. Wouldn't it have been stupid for them to manufacture a car and then it starts raining and now you can't even see? You got to pull over to the side and wait until it stops raining? No. But the manufacturer put windshield wipers on it because they built it with the storm in mind. They built a heating system in there because they built it with winter in mind. Defrosters because they were building it for the weather. You see, don't let it be an afterthought. And there are things that God has already built in you, and you never know it until you get in the situation. You don't know what you can do until you're put in a position where you've got to do it. You've got the equipment and have never used it, because why would I use my heater when it's already 90 degrees outdoors? And so you haven't been in that season. There's some thing that God has already built in you, and you never really see that thing until you get in that season of your life. You don't know what all you can do until you get in that season. But God built it in you. He already had that idea as a manufacturer. He had it in mind. God made provision. He made provision. Did you know that a little girl, when she is born, she has all of the eggs in her ovaries that she will ever have? Girls don't manufacture eggs. God already equipped them with it at birth. They've got all of the eggs that they'll ever have in the course of their life already in their ovaries. And what happens when they reach around 11 or 12 years old, those eggs start maturing. But God put them there already because He was providing. He saw a need for reproduction, and He already provided it in home girl. She was carrying it with her when she was 5. She was carrying it with her when she was 7. And she never knew it until she got in a season of her life and her hormones woke up. And you'll be surprised, there are some things that God's getting ready to wake up in you. There is divine potential. There are seeds of ideas, of businesses and things, and it's getting ready. Listen, you've been doing it for others, and you're coming into another season now where you're going to do it for yourself. You've served other folks' vision. There'll be a time you'll only serve other folks' vision for so long before then God will trust you with your vision. And the same faithfulness that you've sown in helping build somebody else's vision, God will then call others to come and help you to build yours. But it's all about divine provision. It is about foreseeing. Whenever you have provision with you, provision, money is provision, seed, all of these kinds of things, they are provision. It is for the vision. It's for the vision. God was foreseeing it. Don't just start enjoying something right now without asking the question, God, what is this for? There is a provision. It is for the vision. Provision comes for vision. I want you to realize this very carefully, that repeating the past won't create a new future. Repeating the past won't create a new future. And repeating the past creates more of the past. Repeating the past creates more of the past. You have incredible potential to create a fascinating future. Do you know that you've got more talent and more abilities than you could use in 100 lifetimes? What can you do with your life from this day forward? Just ask yourself that question. What in the world can I do? And really the answer to that is limited only by your imagination. You can go no place in reality that you've not first been at in imagination. Did you know that your brain contains about 100 billion neurons, each that's connected to as many as 20,000 other cells in a complex network of ganglia and dendrites in your brain? This means that the possible thought combinations of all of the thoughts that you could think of would be equal to the number 1 and 8 pages of zeros. 8 pages of zeros. This number is greater than all of the molecules in the known universe. That's just the potential of your possibilities. It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing, the ability that God has placed on the inside of us. Absolutely amazing. I'm blown away when I begin to think about that. I really am. And when you think about that, because you have so much incredible potential on the inside of you, I want you to make a note of this to yourself. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And here's why I say this. Because if you're trained on a job to do a particular job, training prepares you to do one job. Developing a person allows you to do many kinds of jobs. But if I just train you how to do data input on a computer, that's all you know how to do is data input. But if I develop you, you can run the office. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. You'll make yourself more valuable. And if anything happened in the place where you are, you've got an open door because you have developed yourself. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Working harder on yourself, I'm not talking about shortchanging your job where you work. When you work harder on yourself than you do on your job, you become more valuable to your job. You become more valuable to your job. There were some companies years ago that started squirming about putting money in and investing their employees, giving them training, and then they leave you. And then somebody finally told this businessman, they said, listen, what's worse than training your business people and they leave you is not training them and they stay. So you have to work harder on developing yourself. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. There are some people that work so hard on their job and they're doing no self-development and they're not getting any better. I tell you, one lady, a principal overheard a teacher telling somebody that she had 25 years experience teaching. And that principal nudged another lady and she said, this woman does not have 25 years of experience teaching. She's got 1 year of experience teaching that's been repeated 25 times. And there's a huge difference. You know, she was saying here, this woman had never taken the time to develop herself. She felt like she had learned the position and that's all that she was doing, and she wasn't giving it anymore. She brought no more development to herself because she knew how to do the job. And you make a terrible mistake in your life when you just learn the role in your position and never develop yourself to become more. When you develop yourself to become more, you become worth more to the place where you are. And you create greater doors of opportunities for you in many, many other places. So always make it a habit. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. It'll take you places in life. It really will. And I'm just convinced that the simpletons, they just go ahead into things without considering what's ahead. They have no thought or consideration for any provision. Any provision. They have no consideration for provision. I did the funeral a number of years ago of a man who took his own life. He was such a responsible man in his lifetime that he left everything in order in his death. And he had left instructions for me to do his eulogy. Knowing that he was going to commit suicide, he wrote out the instruction. He said, I want Browner to do my eulogy. And left money to pay me. And everything that he listed out, he left the money for. He didn't leave a penny of debt in the earth. He made provision. He made provision. It's very interesting. It was very responsible. He had no children. He had no children. He took care of all of his business. He made provisions for everything that he specified. He made provisions for it. He saw it ahead of time, made provision for it. It was very tragic how he killed himself. But he made provision. He was faithful unto death. with his life, with his substance, and he was looking ahead toward the future. I just pray that he also made the provision for the place where he would spend eternity as a soul. But knowing him, he did. He was so much of a stickler for making provision for things that were to come. But you have to plan ahead, because remember, it was not raining when Noah built the ark. If you wait to build something when it's raining, you're too late. I'm just telling you, you're going to drown. I don't mean to be a prophet of gloom and doom. But if you wait until it's pouring down in torrential levels, you're absolutely too late. You're too late. And you'll have to employ discernment to know when to be persistent and when to be willing to change. You must develop in discernment to know when to be persistent and when to be willing to change. Persistence is the best thing in the world that you can have when you're on the right track. One of the worst things is to be persistent, stubbornly wrong. But there's certainly a place for the philosophy of, if at first you don't succeed, try again. But you be persistent when you know where you're going. But what if you're on the wrong road, a road that leads to nowhere, or a track that leads to a dead end? Then the best thing that you can do is to switch tracks. And if the past is creating your desired trajectory, persist. If not, begin creating a new one. And I don't want you to take these words out of context and use them as a confirmation for you to leave your spouse. Let me leave you some words of wisdom here. Never quit something with great long-term potential just because you can't deal with the stress of the moment. Never quit something with long-term potential just because you can't deal with the stress of the moment. You have to take your time and realize that we are in a season of life right now that you've never been in before. We're at a point in history, you can't go to books and consult the wisdom of the past to teach you how to navigate a changing landscape and seascape. We're having a changing seascape where the foundational principles of things that we were built on are changing. It used to be where the goal was to get with a good company and work there for 40 years, get a gold watch at the end of your retirement, and now you'll have about 11 different jobs, over 3 or 4 or 5 different careers. And so that's no longer the goal. Companies are no longer looking for long-term employees. They want to get you for 3 or 4 or 5 years, maximize the life out of you, and throw you away and then get somebody else who's young and creative and innovative. They will suck your life out for 5 or 7 years and then boot you out and bring in somebody younger that they can pay a cheaper salary to and keep their business lean and mean. It's just the way the game works. And so you got to be prepared for it, because this is a changing seascape. And so if you got counsel by your grandparents, that was a different world, a different day. The methods have changed. The methods have changed. And so when you deal with the big boys, the methods have changed now. And I'm going to help to walk you through this thing to make you master navigators. And one of them will be able to sensitize your ear to the voice of the Lord and to sharpen your discernment in various areas. But our seascape on which we are right now is changing. And I call it a seascape because we're not on land. Land is real solid, but water is real unstable. We're on water now. We're on water now. And there are some things that we're having to learn how to circumnavigate these waters, unstable, uncertain times. How do you remain faithful and committed to certain things during unstable times? When the world is losing its mind, when morality has been redefined, but it should not be for the Christian. The changing of the time does not change the law of God. If they ever come and try to change the 10 Commandments, they've gone too far. And when the current morality takes things that are wrong and try to make them right, and things that were right and try to make them wrong, and bring us under conviction because of principles that are right. God is God, and he's looking for a people that will obey. And I'm just here to tell you that there is no suitable substitute for obedience. God's calling for obedience from his people. It's far better than sacrifice. And when God tells you to do something, and if you fail to do it, you're going to lose some of your joy, some of your happiness, some of your peace. Your peace will be disturbed if you're outside of the will of God. It really will. And so, but when you are in God's will, committed to Jesus Christ and his purposes, you can go through hell and high water, tossed and driven by waves crashing and dashing against your life. But you got an anchor, rooted and grounded in him, cared for so incredibly by him. And your life becomes secure with him in an incredible, incredible way. I've got some fascinating things to tell you next time. I'm going to teach you some things. I'm not a real student of history myself, but I've had to go back in history to pull some things for you that will teach you about the future. The farther I'm learning, the older that I get, that the farther back that you look, the farther forward you can see. And I'm going to show you something from back then that'll help you to see something right now. I almost hate that my time is going. I can't tell it to you tonight, but I'll see you next week, and you'll learn something that'll bless your life and give you wisdom for the journey.
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. Until next time, God bless you.